So for step 15, attaching front axles, we're going to need to grab a few things off the different parts trees. So that's going to come off of parts tree C and parts tree F. We've got our two axles that we built in the previous step. And then down here you can see we've got this U-shaped shaft. Not seen that before, so this is going to be interesting. I'm curious to see what this looks like once it's in. So for hardware, we're going to need these step screws. We've got the screw pins and these step screws, as well as washers and our axles. So I'll set this up, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to work on these two steps first before we go any farther. So let's start with this side right here. So for this step, let's take one of our F1 pieces, and you can see, if you note placement, there's two marks on this side which are right there, which is more than likely what we're going to be attaching the shocks to at one point. And if we take our C13 piece, which is this one, you'll see that on this side there's a notch on the top and then the bottom's flat. So this is going to fit in just like that, and we're going to be using one of our screw pins, and the screw pin essentially is just going to fit in there, through there, and then it's going to just screw into the other side. So if we do that, let's just screw this in. Because it's all the way in and you can't go any farther. So, and you can see we've got full movement, which we're going to need to have for the suspension to work. So that part is done. Then if we take our axle that we built in step 14, you can see that in terms of the way this is going to sit, the ball connector is down. We're going to take this and put it right there. And this is attached with these MB2 ones, and you're going to put one into the top, and we're going to put one into the bottom as well. So let's just screw this one in. And I'm not going to go all the way. I just want to make sure that it's in for now. Take the other side. Screw that one in. And now that they're both in, I will now screw all the way. And there we have it. So, if we look at the diagram, this is how it's going to look. You can see the diagram and the image. So that is how that's going to look, and the axle is going to fit through that hole, through this black piece right there, but it still is going to allow for the turning. But not much. It's interesting the way that's shaped. I mean, it has to allow for turning, but I guess it's not going to turn as much as you think. I don't know, that's interesting. It just seems like a very small opening, but it must be enough. So that is one side. So let's go ahead and do the other. So if we grab our F1 piece again, we'll grab our C1, and remember, you're going to have that notched piece at the top. We'll put that in there. Grab our screw, what do they call it? Screw pin through there, into there, and we'll screw this in. And we can screw this all the way. Don't over tighten, but just make sure that it's okay. And it is. We've got complete movement there. So then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our other front axle. We are going to slide that in on either side. Grab one of our larger step screws and screw that in. And again, not going to screw it all the way. I just want to make sure that both screws go in with relative ease. And yes, so now I will continue to screw this one in. Screwed in. And then we take this one. And that's screwed in. And so now we have full movement. So you can see that that is in the end how that should look. So that part of the step is done. We have both front axle pieces done. So now we are going to need to attach this all to the front gearbox that we were working with. Now, let's just sort of take a step back here. You can see we're going to need to grease up the axles, and then we have the step screws that we're going to have to grease up a little bit too. So first, I think what we'll do is you can see that we now have this bar that is going to be used to hold on the bottom part. So you can see that this is going to end up fitting through there. But in order to do that, we first have to take it through on both sides. So if we take this, in fact, it's all got to be done pretty much at the same time, is if we take these, just make sure that they're in place. We're going to slide those on. Make sure it slides through. So you can see that that is how it looks. And you see it's gone through the red of the front gearbox and then comes out at the end. But notice that there's nothing it's attaching to. So I'm not sure what that means yet. That is a really interesting design. But you can't push that any farther because that's resting up against the front part of the gearbox. So that part is done. So now we just need to grease everything up. Okay, so first off, let's grease up our dog bone. So we're going to need to put some grease on both ends. Get that nice and shiny. Or unshiny, I should say. So get a fair bit on there. I got lots of grease now, so I can go ahead and do my usual liberal greasing. Okay, so now we're going to take that dog bone, slide it through the hole, get it in there, and then slide it in there. So now the dog bone is inside. Now, what we're going to have to do is we need to grease the step screw, which we will do. Fair bit on there, I guess. And there is a washer that goes on, but it goes through here, and the washer is in between the two things. Okay, so we're going to take the step screw, put the washer in between the two plastic bits, then put it into the hole. So that is how it should look. You've got the step screw and the washer in between the two plastic parts. So now we'll screw this in. And there we have one side done. You can see how that's going to move, and you can see how that axle's going to move. And in the end, the slot that's there, which might be harder to see now, It's actually works fine. It just didn't look right, but it actually is totally fine. You've got complete motion of the steering arm. So that side's done. So let's go and move to the other side. So again, let's grease up our dog bone. I'm sure there's enough there, but that's all right. And we will tilt this back so that we can stick that in. Then tilt it back so we can stick that side in. And then again, we're gonna grease up our step screw and slide that through the top. Grab our washer. That on right there in between, and oops, get that right between. There we go, and into the hole. And now we will screw that in. And there we have it. So there is that side complete as well. So now we have this front setup totally complete with the drive shafts all in. And then this piece, I still don't understand how that works, but from what I've gathered from the way this is being put together, is it just holds it. And once it's into the rest of the chassis, it's not going to get tied down. It will just hold everything together with all of the other screws and pieces that are attached to this setup. So very cool. So that is done. Step 15 is complete. So now we're going to move on to bag C, because we're going to start working on the oil-filled dampers for 16.